There's nobody you know better than yourself. We could always know ourselves better than we actually do, I suppose. I mean, there's secret motives and stuff rattling around in the back of our heads, but compared to how well we know everybody else, I mean, nobody knows you like you. Nobody knows me like me. And as we go through life, it's not just that we know ourselves in the moment, but we also have this narrative that we craft with characters who come in and out of the story. We assign meanings. It's why we get weirdly competitive at times over things that don't matter to other people, but to us, it's like, that's part of the narrative. This is part of the story, and I know myself, and in order to feel right about things, I need to win this game of Uno or whatever it is. And that narrative isn't just about progress or winning or growth. It's also about failure and shame and the stuff that we drag with us that nobody else knows. Like maybe somebody else knows all of the embarrassing things you've done. Maybe, probably just you know that. But definitely, only you know all the embarrassing things you've thought. You understand what things trigger you, what things draw out the beautiful responses from you, what things are going to put you in a really awkward position, what stuff breaks your heart when you see it and might cause you to respond to something with great compassion or to respond to something tremendously erratically. You know you so dang well. Now imagine what it would be like to know anybody else as well as you know you. Just picture that. Like having this symbiosis with another person where you don't just know their dance steps. I got a couple of friends and obviously my wife where I know their rhythms pretty well. I know how they're going to respond to this or that. I can anticipate it pretty well, but I don't know every little deep dark corner of their brains. I mean, no way, not even close. But imagine that you did. Imagine that you knew another person as well as you knew yourself. How insane would that be to have that complex perspective that really you probably only have enough space in your brain and in your psyche for one person? Imagine having that for two people. Maybe you imagine that scenario and you're like, I would hate that. I would despise that other person. But maybe a few of you would say that you hate yourselves. If so, I'm sorry, by the way. I don't want you to feel like that. I don't think you need to feel like that. But I know there are some people who genuinely are in that place. And if you do feel that right now, you don't have to. You have tremendous value, and you don't need to carry that burden around, and you don't need to feel that way. There's all kinds of reasons for you to give a rip about yourself and see the value that you have, but this is a one-way relationship, and I suppose there's not much more that I can do other than to just say, hey, chin up, hang in. You're valuable and beautiful, and you bring a lot to the table, and don't think that way about yourself. But for most of you, you're like, yeah, even with all my blemishes, I love me. I root for me. I'm the point of view character of my narrative. And I might not like everything about the way my story's going, but there's no other story that I'll ever experience through these lenses with such detailed interaction from the five senses that I get as I feel things and taste things and touch things and smell things and hear things. Like, I am in the zone in a way that I can never be with another story or another person. But my guess would be that if you did know someone else and experience their story the way you know and experience your own story, you would love them because you would see the whole picture, the whole story. You couldn't judge that person in the same way that we judge people external to ourselves. I don't know about you, but I just really haven't run this simulation, and that's why I'm taking so much time with it here. I haven't really run this simulation before of what would it be like to know someone as well as I know me. And maybe part of the reason I haven't run this simulation before is because as I'm sitting here doing it, it's pretty mind-bending. The Bible describes the Godhead, the God character of the Bible, as having three distinct persons who are also one. And I get, for some of you who are processing this with me right now, you're like, that's one of the things I just can't do with Christianity. That breaks the rules of physics and abstract logical reason as I know it. You can't have a being that is three beings in one being and it's one being. That doesn't work for me. The Trinity part of Christianity is baffling. Well, look, I'm going to give you a little insider knowledge here. The Trinity part of Christianity is pretty baffling for people who are Christians, too. It's a concept that reminds us of the otherness of God. God is not just an exaggerated version of you or me. Here is yet one more way that God is fundamentally different than you and me. You and I can't know someone else as well as we know ourselves. We cannot be three beings in one distinct yet one. We can't do that, yet God has that capacity. And if that causes friction for you, hey, no hard feelings. Welcome to the club. It was a very difficult question for the early Christians to figure out as well. And honestly, it continues to be a difficult question. But if I'm reading Matthew 11 correctly, in this one verse that you and I have been dwelling on now for the better part of a week, that is Matthew 11:27, if I'm reading this right, what we are hearing described here in the words of Jesus is a unity between he and God the Father that is so complete and so comprehensive that it goes even beyond knowing someone else as well as you or I know ourselves. Because our knowledge, even of ourselves, is limited, but here we're talking about a character, the Father and the Son, who the text holds out as being unlimited. I mean, they're not bound by lack of knowledge, which means that they don't know the other as well as any human could know another person or know themselves, which is only sort of. It means they know each other infinitely. There is nothing they do not know or understand about the other, which means that if they are in lockstep on a thing, they are in lockstep in a way that you and I could never comprehend. My wife and I go and do this little dance thing sometimes. It's fun. We go on Tuesday nights. We're pretty terrible. We're like the probably second worst couple at this thing. But I really like her, and I really like what dancing does, and I'm really excited to go and sign up for our next class and learn another one. It feels great. When the rhythm is going, we're like, whoa, 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 we got it. This is it. Keep going. Count it. 1, 2, 3, and 1. And it feels amazing because it's like we're moving as one, we're doing this thing as one, and it's like a metaphor for when we're really on the same page marriage-wise, but still she's external to me and I'm external to her. And that little glimpse into real unity is exciting, it's thrilling, it's a bolt of energy. But again, what Jesus is describing in Matthew 11:27, which I still haven't read, I'm going to read it in just a second, is so far beyond that and characterizes such complete unity between two characters that I suppose if you were this knowledgeable of the other, at that point you would have to call yourselves one definitionally, because there's no boundary marker that is meaningful between the two when they know each other completely and intimately, as described here in Matthew 11:27, where Jesus says, "All things have been committed to me by my Father. No one knows the Son except the Father, and no one knows the Father except the Son, and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him." The thing we all want, the thing out of which pride is born as well as humility is born, the thing out of which the richness of a meaningful relationship is born, the thing out of which the bittersweetness of love and loss is born, the thing out of which the heartbreak and bitterness of death is born, is this human impulse to know and to be known. This abiding sense that we all have that even with all of our dents and dings and scuffs and tragedies and disasters, we are still worth knowing. We believe that. We believe that even the clumsy story is still the beautiful story when it's our story, and we desire deeply for somebody else not just to take the time to understand it, but to be wired the right way, to see the beauty and the tragedy in it, and to appreciate the one story that we own that is our story. And this verse, when I really think about it, is just one more example in the Bible of how people really are made in the image of God. Central to who God is not just a perfect entity, but also perfect relationship. And that exists within one entity. And in a way, if this deity were only one entity, then this deity is imperfect because this deity could not know perfect relationship unless there is something else perfect that could match that perfection in relationship and knowledge. And so it's surprising to me that human religions haven't come up with more Trinity-type descriptions of a Godhead, because your God isn't really immutable, perfect, and unlimited, unless that God is unlimited in their capacity to know and have relationship, which is part of the existence in any universe where there's more than one thing. So this passage, I think, points to people being made in the image of God, a God that is all about knowing and being known, even within the boundaries of the Trinity, the Godhead itself. That impulse you feel with your story and with the value that you're able to see in others and with the value that you are aware is present in you, that is a reflection of this thing that Jesus is saying right here. And I don't think that in a document where I am, the statement of essence is the name of the God character, I don't think it's an accident that we get the I am Iron Man statement here of Matthew 11:27, except we don't actually get the I am. We don't get so much an essence statement, we get a knowledge statement. The way that Jesus shows or articulates how much he is in fact the Son of God and God in the flesh is to talk about knowing. I know the Father. The Father knows me. No one knows the Father except the Son and those to whom the Son chooses to reveal him. We got to get to the second part of that phrase. Next time around, we still have a ways to go on Matthew 11:27. But true, intimate, unbroken, complete, infinite knowledge of the other is how Jesus chooses to articulate how utterly unified he and the Father are and how utterly unique the relationship between these two parties is. As I just mentioned a second ago, we got so far to go on this Matthew 11:27 thing. We'll continue to unpack the implications of this next time around. If you're like, why are we doing this? This is taking too long. Let's go on to the next thing. I want some car chase explosions or something. You got to roll with me. Because our goal is to understand the book of Matthew. Whatever you end up doing with it, it's whatever you end up doing with it, but we want to understand it for what it is. And this statement is massively huge in the unfolding of the whole thing and massively affects how we read the rest. So we're going to linger just a little bit longer. I appreciate you, because if you are here and you are doing this with me right now, it means you have an appetite for grinding it out and doing the work to think through as many of these implications as we can, to be a fair thinker about a text that holds itself out as having tremendous bearing on even our own individual lives, before we even talk about the implications it has for all of existence and morality and everything else. So thank you for grinding through this with me and thinking it through carefully. I'm Matt. This is the 10-Minute Bible Hour podcast. And I wasn't joking around earlier when I said you have tremendous value. All right. Thanks again for hanging out. I'll catch you tomorrow.